excited to share my vision for what I see as self-care coaching. The idea for this has come over a long period of time for me, both through my own self-care journey, and through my work as a yoga teacher and practitioner for 15 years, but also as an ordained clergy person in the United Church of Christ. So I come to this work with all of those things. And so the concept of self-care coaching has come to me by talking with leaders, both folks within the church and outside of the church. It seems almost universal that people struggle with self-care and struggle to find ways that are meaningful to care for themselves. And one thing that I'll mention before we dive any further in is that when I say self-care, I'm talking about spiritual practices, things like that go a little deeper than, say, sitting down with a glass of wine and popcorn and watching a movie. It goes beyond getting a manicure and pedicure. And the folks on this call and others will know that I love all of those things and I do all of those things. But what I'm really focusing on for the purposes of self-care coaching are those deeper spiritual practices that both have the ability to support us through times of challenge, but the practices themselves actually challenge us to grow. The confessional part of this is that when I started yoga 15 years ago, which was right about the time that I finished my Master's of Divinity and finished seminary and was on my way to being ordained, I knew that I needed self-care practices in that kind of life and work, but things like meditation or centering prayer, those seated things, did not work for me at all at the time, or I perceived that they didn't work because my mind would wander and I would be jumpy and I would want to make lists and all kinds of things. So I did yoga asana, I did movement practice for really the bulk of my first 10 years of practice. In the last 5 years, that's evolved to being more seated practices, and I'll say a little bit more about that later. But so some of what I've acquired, these skills that I've acquired, are because I've tried just about everything. And these are the three key kind of components to the coaching that I would envision. The first would be that we would practice, just like we were doing earlier today. We would practice different forms of spiritual practices, meditation. It can be physical yoga if that's what resonates with people. I'm attuned in Reiki, healing and energy healing practice as well. There's a number of things that I'll tell you more about later. But we would practice things. We would reflect on them. I would invite you to reflect on what impact that those practices are having on you. And then finally integrate those in. So you would find new ways to integrate them into your own practice and even integrate them into your life or your work or to your family life as well. So any of those things. So a little bit more about practice. So there's a number of practices that I can offer. I have certifications in a number of kinds of meditation practices, including I-Rest Yoga Nidra, which is a specific kind of Yoga Nidra is an ancient practice. I-Rest is a recent, about last 30 years, adaptation of that. It was originally adapted for the military, for soldiers returning from combat who had PTSD. It's found to be very effective for PTSD, but it's been effective for lots and lots of other things as well. That's a practice that I could teach. We can do focus or concentration meditations. The body scan meditation that we just did is actually an example of that, because you're focusing on parts of your body as we're scanning through it. We can do loving kindness or compassion meditations. There's a number of different kinds of these. One of the a form of this that's become a little bit better known lately is metta. It's a Buddhist meditation where you actually send first loving kindness to yourself, and then you send it out to the rest of the world. And then I know a number of Christian prayer practices as well, like centering prayer or Lectio Divina or the Examen prayer. There's a number of others if that's something that's within your tradition or something that you wanted to experiment with as well. I also have a certification in breath work and pranayama. I know a number of breath practices that can be used therapeutically or just for a variety of different kinds of moods that people might be in as well, or just different situations that people might find themselves in. I was just attuned this past weekend as a Reiki master, so I can do Reiki, which is an energy healing. It can be done either in person through touch. Um, so it's energy that typically comes through someone's hands by placing your hands on my hands on another person, offering them healing energy. Reiki energy can also be sent to another place. So if we were doing our coaching sessions like this via Zoom, the Reiki could be sent and we could experiment with it that way as well. We can experiment with yoga asana and movement. That obviously would work a little bit better if we were in person. But if you wanted to add that to your own personal practice, and we're not in the same place, we certainly can work on finding a yoga studio if you don't have one already, and that can be incorporated into your practice by going to classes. There's usually yoga studios just about anywhere these days. But I certainly can also suggest, we can process that and reflect on that. I can also suggest postures that you might do, particularly restorative postures, which I'm particularly fond of these days. And then we would do some reflection. I would invite you to do some reflection immediately after your practice. Typically that would be in the morning, but we would work on what worked for you. Reflect on what impact immediately those practices had on you, so that we're getting a sense of that. And then also reflecting on what impact that has during the course of the day, in your interactions with other people and things like that. So we can get a sense of what is working the best for you in a variety of situations. We would start getting a sense of what works best for you. We can develop a real self-care plan for you so that you know what you need to really be your best self in the work and the life and your family that you are in right now. But we can also explore how you might integrate those in your work life as well. So that might look like doing a meditation like I just did, a short meditation before a meeting starts that you're leading, for example. I really prefer at least folks to commit to at least 3 sessions of coaching. So that we have enough time to really get through those 3 parts and that you have at least several weeks of practicing some new things to get a sense of how they work for you.
I am really excited to extend self care coaching as a practice for you. So schedule an appointment today at my website, NicoleHavelkaConsulting.com, by just scrolling to the bottom and click on schedule an appointment. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.